Chapter 2. He's not loving it anymore. He's dead. New York, Avenue of the Americas. A cream Mercedes stretch limo with tinted windows glides down 47th Street. A 40-something man sits in the back seat, cleaning makeup from his face with a towelette. He leans back into the luxury leather in his $1,000 slate-coloured suit, ruffles his saddle-brown hair, and loosens his silk tie. He lets out a long breath.
The interview went well, Mr. Eastbrook?
The driver asks. He's an older man, in his late 50s, dressed in a modest navy blue woolen suit and tie, bald, but with a carefully kept silvery beard, as though his hair had dropped to the bottom of his face.
That place just gives me the creeps. Republicans always have. That damn ignoramus interviewer, he kept interrupting me at every opportunity. I think he forgets he was in our goddamn commercial. I couldn't get into my flow. Of course, I was collected and in control, but inside I just wanted to smash his skull in with his own laptop. Ugh, Fox News. Well, I got the spiel across despite that uncharismatic prick.
The driver chuckles. The opening bars to Mac the Knife plays on the stereo.
Oh, the shark bay has such teeth deep, and he shows them pearly white.
Always loved this song.
Stuart says, perking up slightly.
Well, it should have a special meaning for you, sir. And why is that? Seeing as how the company used the song in a string of advertisements to promote a special. Is that so? Yeah, I was in the late 80s. As I recall, they changed the lyrics from Mac the Knife to Mac Tonight. Must have thought that the original lyrics about a knife-wielding murderer were a bit too risque. I'm surprised you can't remember that one.
I joined the company in '93.
Ah, before your time. And? Did it work? The campaign? As I recall, it did the trick. Sold more burgers.
Stuart smiles.
Indeed. Although Bobby Darin's family weren't too happy about it. Sued the company in '89. No more Mac Tonight. That's the way of the world. It's called litigation finance. Wasn't it Picasso who said, good artists borrow, great artists steal?
Stuart gazes out of the window, grinning.
So, back to JFK?
The driver asks.
Yes, I'm flying back to Illinois. Some family time. That'll be nice.
Stuart lets out a dry laugh.
Or maybe not?
The driver asks, peering in the rear-view mirror at his passenger.
It would be nice, yes. Apparently it's a monthly PR trip to McDonald's at Oakbrook. Ah is correct. Force another quarter pounder with cheese down my neck. The things I do for this business. Every job has its downsides.
Stuart chuckles.
That is very true.
The driver notices a bright red and blue light flashing in his wing mirror. An unmarked police car is tailing him.
What the hell? Something wrong? As I was saying, downsides to every job. The police.
Stuart turns around to look out of the back window.
Were you speeding? No, sir. You know me.
Sorry, George, of course.
Then what the hell does he want? I'd better pull over.
George signals and pulls the car to the side of the road. He watches in his wing mirror as the police car pulls up close behind. A police officer donning his hat and sunglasses climbs out of the car and approaches. George pushes down a button to lower the window as the officer arrives at his door.
What can I do for you, officer?
The police officer pulls out a badge and shows it to George.
Can you please step out of the vehicle? Do you mind telling me what this is about? Step out of the vehicle, please.
George hesitates. He looks in the rear-view mirror at a confused Stuart.
Maybe you should do what he asks. I've got a plane to catch in an hour or so.
Stuart watches George slowly nod and reluctantly climb out of the vehicle. He closes the door. Stuart can faintly hear a short exchange of words. Then he hears George raising his voice in protest. Then there is a strange discharge sound and something or someone slams against the side of the car, rocking Stuart inside, sending him into a state of alarm. He begins to breathe heavier.
What the fuck is going on?
He says to himself. He leans forward to look out of his window to see what has happened, and to his shock he sees George sliding down the side of the car and disappearing out of sight.
George?
He whispers. There is a tense pause as he tries to decide what to do.
Officer?
He calls out. The driver door opens quickly and the police officer climbs into the driver's seat, slamming the door closed. Stuart watches him, unsettled.
Officer, what is going on here? There must be some kind of mistake. I'm Stuart Eastbrook, Chief Executive Officer of the McDonald's Corp.
The officer turns around, sporting a pair of aviator shades and a very toothy grin, and raises a strange-looking weapon at Stuart. It's a taser gun.
I know who you are.
Stuart looks at the weapon with wide, frightened eyes.
Brace yourself.
The police officer fires the gun into Stuart's chest. His body turns rigid and violently spasms as 50,000 volts of electricity tears through him until he finally flops down onto the seat, unconscious. Sometime later, Stuart awakens and immediately grimaces and draws in a gasp of chilly air as he feels the aching discomfort from every muscle in his body. For a moment he thinks his neck muscles must still be rigid, as he can't seem to move his head. Then he realises he can't move his arms or legs. He panics and writhes in the seat of the tall dining chair he is taped into. His arms, legs, neck and head are taped to the chair with duct tape. After struggling to free himself and failing, he huffs and rests for a moment. His eyes scan his murky surroundings. He can see that he is in some kind of abandoned, decaying warehouse. He recognises a loading bay.
Manhattan Docks.
He tries to free his hands again, but they don't give.
Help!
He yells. His call echoes through the empty premises. Then silence. But then he hears footsteps. Someone approaching from behind him, out of sight.
Hello? Who's there? Please, help me!
Stuart cries. Someone brushes past him on his left side, startling him.
Oh, thank God, you have to help me.
He says. The figure stands in front of him. Stuart's expression changes from one of desperate hope to confused despair. It's the police officer who had tasered him in the car earlier.
Oh, I think you're a little bit beyond help now, Mr. CEO.
You? Who are you? What do you want with me?
Stuart says, trying to sound brave.
Listen, I don't think you realise the trouble you've gotten yourself into here. My lawyers...
From my point of view, you look like the one who is in, okay, let's say, more immediate trouble here. Mr. CEO?
That's right, Mr. CEO. You don't know who you're fucking with!
Stuart yells, writhing in his seat again.
Careful with all that strenuous activity there, Mr. CEO. Coupled with all those quarter pounders and cheese you claim to eat. In time, you could have a cardiac arrest.
Look, who are you? I'm guessing you're no cop.
Never mind who I am. Who are you?
Stuart looks baffled.
What?
I know who you are, what you do. But do you?
What are you talking about, you crazy son of a...
Who are you?
The officer yells, shocking Stuart.
Stuart East...
Not your name. Who are you? What do you do? Yes?
I'm in the restaurant business?
The restaurant business. Is that what you call it?
Yes. McDonald's. What would you call it?
I call it the needless slavery and slaughter of animals business.
Oh, let me guess. You're part of the Animal Liberation Front?
I call it the disease spreading business.
Oh, what are you talking about? That is ridiculous.
Is it? Cardiovascular disease, cancer, liver disease, stroke, asthma, obesity, diabetes, all linked to meat and fast food consumption. And the list goes on.
We're not forcing anyone to eat our products. What about public accountability? In moderation, our products can be eaten as part of a healthy balance.
Except that people, children, aren't eating in moderation, are they?
Well, how is that the company's fault?
Well, I'm glad you asked. When you bombard children with advertising, promising them all the latest toy from their favorite movie franchise, collect the whole set. They tend to arrest their parents into another visit to your restaurant, which means another happy meal and another risk to their health overall. I mean, to name it, Happy Meal. There's nothing happy about it. The cows and chickens that became that meal certainly weren't too happy being led to their untimely mechanized deaths. And when all those children grew up with thickened arteries and diabetes, I can't see them being too happy either. And you think that by throwing in a cheap plastic toy made by underpaid Chinese people, that this can salvage your Happy Meal? Useless, environmentally destructive pieces of plastic perpetuating the meaninglessness of materialism. So you're not just in the animal killing and disease making business, or the restaurant business, as you claim. You're in the toy making business too. McDonald's being the biggest distributor of toys in the world.
Stuart sits quiet, scanning the ground as if it might offer him a way out of his nightmare.
See, I know who you are, what you do. And I think deep down, you know too. You know what you are, what you do. You know what that evil corporation does, and you want to be the new face of it? Selling your genetically modified sludge to billions of people, spreading over the globe like a cancer. Like the cancer you know your products cause. Pollution, deforestation, lobbying and advertising, manipulating children with cartoon franchises and toys, like a pedophile at the swing park. Come with me, little one. Here, look, I have all these treats and goodies and toys for you. All you have to do is come with me, and here, put this in your mouth. You filthy, repugnant bastard. I've seen you sitting in there with your own kids, shoveling it down their necks too, for a fat paycheck in Ralph Lauren suit. And all the while, over 80 years of animal cruelty and suffering. All those cows, chickens, pigs, and fish slaughtered. And for what? Profit. And flipping burgers. And a big yellow M stamped on the world's consciousness with a hot branding iron.
I work hard for what I do, damn it. I do it for my family, my children. Ho, ho, ho!
Fiction can be fun. Your family, you say. My family, my children. As if there is some kind of honor or nobility there, or truth. You think you are protecting them, setting them up for life. But what kind of life? And at what cost? When the world is so polluted it's hard to breathe, and it's so irradiated that we're sick all the time. When it's hard to find clean water that isn't polluted with agricultural runoff and microplastics. When it's hard to find clean organic food when GMOs have cross-contaminated the planet and pesticides have destroyed our soils. When the lungs of the world, the rainforests, have been decimated to grow cattle feed. The oceans, fishless, turn to acid. When corporations are run by psychopaths who will help perpetuate such a destructive industry, and its products that are proven to cause many hideous illnesses in humans, in children. So tell me again, Mr. CEO, who are you doing this for? Your kids? Future generations?
Stuart says nothing. His eyes well up.
Really? You're selling your own children out? Selling out their future? Aren't you? Don't you see? Ultimately, you're in the death business.
Stuart begins to weep. The officer steps in close to him and gently strokes his cheek as if comforting a child.
Shh, 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 shh. It's okay. I know. You can't help yourself, can you? You just get so carried away, don't you? You business folk.
The officer's strokes become less comforting and more of a heavy scrape. Stuart grimaces.
As my old man used to say, it's all just fun and games to you, isn't it? Juggling businesses and franchises and whoring their glue. You take a giant meaty shit on humanity and sleep like a baby.
The officer slaps him in the face.
Well, not anymore. So now I know you like your fun and games so much. I love a good game too. We're gonna play a special game now.
A game?
That's the spirit. Yes, a game. A special game. It's called Can You Guess What's Going to Happen Next?
Next?
Don't worry, I'm gonna give you some clues along the way.
Clues?
That's right. You just keep repeating my words if it helps. Yes, clues. Now, are you ready to play?
Stuart doesn't answer. The officer stands next to a tall machine of some sort, which is covered with an old dust sheet. There is a coiled hose on the ground. He bends down and grabs the hose with one hand and holds it up for Stuart to see.
Now, here is your first clue.
Stuart looks at it with fearful curiosity. He looks back at the officer.
Hose?
Ding, 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 ding. Correct.
The officer cries.
And your next clue?
He grabs the dust sheet and pulls it to the floor, revealing an old, beat-up, custom water pump. The hose and a large plastic container are crudely attached to it. Stuart peers at it and then back to the officer, who is gesturing to the pump with his hands and grinning like a bimbo from a game show.
Water pump?
Stuart tries to shrug. The officer frowns.
And you were doing so well. It is a pump, but it doesn't pump water. No, this pumps something else, something much more sinister.
The officer opens the large container perched on top of the machine and dips a finger into the substance inside. He quickly approaches Stuart and shoves his finger under his nose. Stuart screws up his face.
Oh, what is that?
Surely you should know your own product when you see it, when you smell it. You've been feeding it to the world's population for who knows how long. Pink slime. Yummy.
McDonald's do not use so-called pink slime in our...
No, but you did. And the only reason you stopped is because it was exposed to the world by a fat-tongued TV chef.
Stuart sits quiet again.
Now, back to our game,
the officer says, returning to the pump and picking up the nozzle end of the hose.
The maximum capacity of the human stomach is 2 to 4 liters. I have 10 liters of pink slime.
He switches on the machine. He turns and slowly begins to approach Stuart again.
So, Mr. CEO, can you guess what's going to happen next?
Stuart's wild eyes, fixated on the nozzle, reveal that he has a pretty good idea of what is about to happen. He starts to squirm in his chair again.
Listen, what do you want from me? Money? I can pay you a healthy amount.
Oh, I know all about your ridiculous salary, but I've got enough money to spank you.
Well, what the hell do you want?
Stuart cries, becoming terrified, as the officer slowly edges the nozzle towards his face.
You want to scare me? Okay, I'm scared. Say I'm sorry? I am sorry. You're right. I know what our company does, what we do to animals, nature, to children. But what do you want me to do? Resign? Please, just tell me. I'll do it. I'll resign.
It's not enough. You'll just be replaced. I have to make an example out of you.
The officer begins to push the nozzle against Stuart's lips.
Jesus Christ! Please!
Stuart cries through pursed lips.
My children! Children! Christ!
The officer crams the nozzle into Stuart's mouth, rattling past his teeth with a sudden surge. The nozzle nests into his gullet, and he immediately begins to gag and writhe. He breathes erratically through his nose as he fights the urge to vomit. The officer uses some kind of elastic cord to fasten the hose to his face. Stuart watches, with bug eyes, the officer's hand reach for the valve, and he panics, gagging and trying to scream. The officer turns the valve. The pink meaty goo sprays with considerable force down Stuart's esophagus. He gags and swallows repeatedly and shakes violently in his seat as his gut is filled with the vile slime. After a short while, slime starts spluttering and spilling from his mouth and nose as it fills up the cavities in his face. His bloodshot eyes roll back in his head and protrude, and he shakes in his seat as the slime finds its way into his windpipe. As he drowns in pink slime and slips into unconsciousness, the slime begins to gush out of his skull's orifices. Slime gushes out of his nose and perforates through his eardrums. His eyes pop out and are carried down his face as the goo oozes from his sockets. The machine pumps the last of the slime into Stuart's head. The officer walks over and switches it off. He returns to Stuart's lifeless body. He reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a small white card and a mobile phone. He tucks the card into Stuart's shirt pocket and takes a picture. As the officer leaves, he smiles and whistles a familiar catchy jingle.